Hey everyone, and welcome. If you're gearing up for your fundamentals class, you are in the perfect spot. Consider this your pre-class primer for Chapter 37. We're going to build your vocabulary around stress and coping so you can walk into that lecture feeling totally prepared. So, to get us started, let's think about this. An upcoming exam, right? For one person, it can feel like motivating pressure. For someone else, it can be pure panic. Now, the exam itself doesn't change, so what does? It all comes down to perception, and that single idea is going to be at the heart of everything we talk about today. And that leads us right into our first section, the trigger and the thought. We're about to break down how stress isn't just some event that happens to you, it's really a two-part process that starts with a trigger, and this is the key part, your own interpretation of it. First up, the big one, stress itself. At its absolute core, stress is just the body's reaction to any change that it has to respond to. And what's really important to get is that it's a neutral term. You know, starting a new job can be stressful in a good way, just like a really tough clinical rotation can be stressful in a hard way. Stress is the reaction, not the thing that caused it. So if stress is the reaction, what causes it? Well, those are the stressors. The best way to think about these is like the intruder alerts for your own personal security system. They're the events, the things, the stimuli, whether it's a project deadline, a difficult patient, or even just being in a super crowded room, that kick the whole process off. Okay, so here is the crucial link that connects a stressor to the feeling of stress, appraisal. This is that super important mental step where your brain makes a split-second call and basically asks, hey, is this actually a big deal for me right now? And that appraisal, it happens in two quick stages. First, you've got primary appraisal. Your brain looks at the stressor and asks, is this a threat? Is it something good? Or is it totally irrelevant? If your brain flags it as a potential threat, you instantly jump to secondary appraisal, which asks, okay, what do I have in my toolbox? Can I actually handle this? The answers to those two questions pretty much determine your entire stress response. So what happens after that? Well, once your brain appraises a situation as a threat that might be too much for you to handle, your body's alarm system just goes off. Think of it as your built-in physiological security response kicking into high gear. And the very first alarm bell that rings is the classic fight-or-flight response. This is that immediate, totally automatic flood of adrenaline and cortisol. Your heart starts pounding, your breathing gets faster, your senses get sharper. Your body isn't even thinking. It's just getting you ready to either face the danger or run away as fast as you can. But what happens when that stressor just doesn't go away? That's where this model by Hans Selye comes in. It's called the General Adaptation Syndrome, or GAS for short. And it's like a roadmap for how the body deals with stress over a longer period of time. GAS plays out in three stages. First, you've got the alarm stage. That's the initial shock, your fight or flight kicking in. If the stress keeps up, you move into the resistance stage. Here, your body adapts and tries to cope. You might look normal on the outside, but you're burning through energy on the inside. But you can't stay in that mode forever. Eventually, if the stressor doesn't let up, you hit the exhaustion stage. And that's when your body's resources are just tapped out, leaving you wide open to getting sick and feeling exhausted. Now, the process your body is using to get through all this is called allostasis. If you think of homeostasis as a state of being in balance, think of allostasis as the active work of keeping that balance. It's your body constantly tweaking your heart rate, your hormones, your immune system, all to meet the demands of whatever is stressing you out. It is literally adaptation in real time. But all that constant adjusting, it has a cost, and that cost is called the allostatic load. It's the wear and tear on your body that builds up when you're in that state of allostasis for way too long. This is pretty much what pushes you from that resistance stage right into exhaustion. So that brings us to a really critical question. What happens when that allostatic load, that wear and tear, just gets too heavy? Well, we hit a tipping point. It's the moment where the stress just completely overwhelms our ability to adapt and cope. And that tipping point has a name. It's called a crisis. A crisis is what happens when a stressor is so intense that your usual ways of managing things, the stuff that's always worked for you before, suddenly just isn't enough. You're thrown off balance, and you have no idea how to get back. Now, in your studies, you're going to see crises broken down into three main types. You've got situational crises, which are those totally unexpected events, like a sudden illness. Then there are developmental crises. Those are the predictable life transitions, like graduating or having a baby. And finally, adventitious crises, which are those big, unplanned disasters, like a natural disaster or an act of violence. Now, when a crisis or some other event is so incredibly severe that it leaves behind a deep psychological wound, that is what we call trauma. It's way more than just stress. It's a genuine injury to a person's psyche that can have really long-lasting effects. And for some people, that traumatic injury can lead to post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. One of the absolute defining features of PTSD is re-experiencing the event through flashbacks. These are vivid, intrusive memories where the person feels like they are right back in that traumatic moment, living it all over again. Okay, so we've covered a lot of the heavy stuff, from stressors all the way to trauma. So now let's shift gears and talk about the aftermath and, more importantly, the tools we can actually use to manage stress and build our resilience. This is your toolkit section. This is a really, really important one for anyone going into a helping profession. So burnout is that state of emotional exhaustion you get from any kind of long-term stress. But compassion fatigue is different. It's a specific kind of secondary traumatic stress that happens when you absorb the trauma and suffering of the very people you're trying to help. So how do we actually deal with all this stuff? Well, we use coping strategies, and the key word here is conscious. Coping means the intentional things we do, the thoughts we choose to think, and the actions we choose to take to actively try and manage a stressful situation. Now, on the flip side of those conscious coping strategies, we've got ego defense mechanisms. These are the unconscious strategies our mind uses automatically to protect us from feeling anxious and to keep our self-image intact. We're talking about things like denial or rationalization. They just happen without us even thinking about it. When someone is in the middle of an acute crisis and their own coping skills have totally failed them, that's when we use something called crisis intervention. This is a very specific, short-term approach that is focused on just one thing, helping that person get back to a place of emotional stability and safety as fast as possible. And finally, let's talk about a really proactive tool. Mindfulness is a super powerful practice for managing stress before it can ever become a crisis. It's really just the simple act of paying attention to right now, without judging anything. And doing that helps to short-circuit the whole stress response by calming down both your mind and your body. So we'll end with this. We've just taken apart the anatomy of stress, from the trigger to the thought to the body's response and the tools for coping. The real question now is, with all this knowledge, how can we stop just reacting to our stress and instead become the active architects of our own resilience? That's a great question to take with you into class. We really hope this primer helps.